as I have disappeared off the face of the planet and probably won't be making videos regularly anytime soon, but I do have a tradition of making a video every year summarising my year in books, and I'm going to stick to that tradition. As always, I'm going to talk about my top 5 favourite books. I loved all of these books so much that I'm still not sure about the order that I put them in, but I'm going to stick with it and move on. So number 5 is actually the last book that I read last year, which is The Christmasaurus by Tom Fletcher. So I have to admit that the main reason why I bought this book was because I adore Tom. If you don't know, Tom is in a British pop group called McFly, who have pretty much been my favourite band since I was about 12. Tom has also written a series of picture books with fellow bandmate Dougie Pointer about a dinosaur who poops various things. I have only read The Dinosaur That Poops Christmas, but I think it's brilliant and it's a great picture book for young children. However, Tom has decided to write a full-on children's novel about dinosaurs and Christmas, although I was disappointed in the lack of poop involved. The book follows a young boy named William Trundle who adores dinosaurs. He sends a letter to Santa explaining that all he wants for Christmas is a dinosaur. I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable present to ask for, right? William wakes up to find, you guessed it, a real-life dinosaur in his bedroom. William and the Christmasaurus go on some pretty epic adventures and even run into Santa himself. Something that I loved about this book was that William is disabled and uses a wheelchair to get around. I feel as if there aren't enough diverse children's books, and this one gave a really positive message to disabled children, that just because they're disabled, it doesn't mean that they can't achieve their dreams. Number 4 is Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. If you've watched any of my other videos where I've rambled about books, you'll probably have figured out by now that I adore Cassandra Clare and her books that are set in the Shadowhunter world. This one takes place 5 years after the events of the Mortal Instruments series and follows a girl called Emma Carstairs, who we met in City of Heavenly Fire. Emma's parents died when she was 12 years old, and since then she has been trying to find out who the killer was. Mundanes and fairies start getting murdered in a similar way to how her parents were, so she realises there must be a connection between the two. With her parabatai jewels, she decides to try to find out who is behind it all. Even though I wasn't that keen on these characters in the Mortal Instruments series, I adored them in Lady Midnight. I particularly adored Mark Blackthorne, who is Jules' half-brother. Mark is part fairy and has recently been returned to his family after spending years with a wild hunt, and he was such a funny and quirky character. He just seemed to be in a constant state of confusion over normal everyday things, and I loved how the younger Blackthorns kept playing pranks on him and making him believe silly things. I also adored Ty and thought it was a really unique idea to give a character in a fantasy novel a mental disability. Even though Ty has autism, the other characters don't treat him any differently, and he has his own little things that he does to cope in certain situations. Ty is extremely smart, and although the main job of a Shadowhunter is to fight, Ty isn't really that keen on fighting, so it was interesting to see other things that Shadowhunters do that we haven't really seen before. I loved seeing his relationship with Kit develop into something of a friendship, and I really hope that they become closer in the next book. I think you could read this book without reading the Mortal Instruments and still understand it, but it does include some things that are a bit spoilery, so I would avoid it for now if you're planning on reading the Mortal Instruments first. So number 3 is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. So I probably don't have to go into detail about this one too much, as you're all aware of what this is. Basically, there's a play on in London at the moment called Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and a script of the play was released. So as some people tend to have not realised, this is a script, not a book. Apart from studying a few Shakespeare plays in school and college, I hadn't really read that many scripts before, so it was quite interesting to read something a little different. As it is a script, it is clear that from just reading this, you are not going to get the desired effect, as it was created for stage. But as I am a huge Harry Potter nerd, of course I was going to read this. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child starts off exactly where Deathly Hallows left off, with Harry Potter sending his son Albus off to Hogwarts for the first time. Albus soon meets Scorpius Malfoy, who of course is the son of Harry's enemy, Draco Malfoy, and they soon become best friends. I felt as if everything was a little confusing, as it mostly focuses on time travel and they're constantly going off to different places. To me, this just didn't feel like a Harry Potter story, and as it wasn't all written by J.K. Rowling, some of the characters seemed a little out of character to me. Basically, I thought it was all a bit of a mess, but the one thing that redeemed it for me was Scorpius Malfoy. I adored Scorpius. He was funny, sarcastic, and basically everything I wanted him to be. I adored his relationship with Albus, which I won't get into right now as I'd be here all day, but just know that I am disappointed in Act 4, Scene 14. Even though it's not perfect, I still really enjoyed being back in the wizarding world. So I'm going to cheat slightly with my number 1 and 2 as they're both a whole series. So my number 2 is the All for the Game series. The series follows Neil, a boy who was on the run from his father, who was known as the Butcher. Neil has been on the run for years, going so far as to change his name and the way he looks. When Neil is recruited by a university to play a sport called XE that he has loved since he was a child, he decides to take the risk. My friend recommended this series to me, and as I was reading the first book, I wasn't really that impressed. Although I did adore Neil, I couldn't for the life of me work out why my friends seemed to like Andrew so much, as to me, he seemed like a complete dickhead. However, as I'd already bought the rest of the series, I decided to persevere, and I'm so glad that I did. Although Andrew literally is a dickhead, you get to find out more about why he is the way that he is, and I just ended up wanting to protect this boy. This series is extremely emotionally draining and has some really upsetting scenes. I don't usually cry over books, but there was a scene that happened in the second book that had me so upset that I was just crying and I couldn't even see, and I had to put the book down. Seriously, if you want to read something happy, then do not read this book. However, if you want character development, minimal romance, a great plot, and a fictional sport that you haven't loved so much since Quidditch, then please read this series. And so, my number one book of 2016 is the Raven Cycle series. I started reading this series right after The Raven King came out, and I was completely hooked from the start. I am quite a slow reader, but I got through this whole series in a month. It follows a girl called Blue Sargent whose whole family have psychic abilities. However, Blue has never shown any abilities herself until St. Mark's Eve, when the ghosts of those who will die within a year will appear. Blue sees the ghost of a boy who says his name is Gansey, and Blue is determined to find out who he is and why he is destined to die. Although the series is a fantasy, I felt as if it somehow felt more real to most of the fantasies that I read. I adore the characters, especially Ronan Lynch, who is probably now one of my all-time favourite fictional characters. Ronan is a typical bad boy who gets into fights and races cars, but he also adores animals and wants to work on a farm, and I just ended up loving this boy so much. I don't want to give away too much, but I thought Ronan was a really interesting character, and I thought his ability was really unique. Although the series isn't as action-packed as some of the fantasy books I've read, these characters were probably my favourites of the whole year. Seriously, if you like fantasy books and you haven't read this series yet, then you need to read it. So those were my top 5 books of 2016. Seriously, I adored all of these books and I couldn't recommend them more. So if you decide to read any of them, or if you've already read them, then please feel free to come talk to me about them. As always, I'll leave links to all of these books down in the description, along with a few other books that I also really enjoyed but didn't quite make it into my top 5. I'll probably be back next year for my annual video, and who knows, maybe I'll make another video between now and 2018. Let's face it, I probably won't. Bye! Called Emma Stairs, who we met in Stairs, who we met in Sitting in Heavy Fire. There was a girl called Emma Stairs who we met in City of Heavenly Fire.